Spiritual awakening is not a path to peace. It is a calculated destruction of everything you believe yourself to be, often leaving you more broken than when you started. This is why your pursuit of higher vibes has left you feeling isolated, emotionally unstable, or even terrified. You aren't failing at spirituality, you are being dismantled by the very light you've been chasing. For centuries, Tibetan Buddhism and ancient wisdom traditions have warned of the dark night of the soul and spiritual bypass, the specific psychological traps that turn a breakthrough into a total nervous system breakdown. By the end of this video, you will understand how to navigate the shadow side of evolution without losing your mind. I'm going to show you how to survive the threshold so that your awakening actually empowers you instead of destroying you. To understand the darker dimension of enlightenment, you must recognize that awakening does not arrive as a gentle elevation into serenity. It functions more like a gradual dismantling of the internal architecture you have relied on your entire life. Spiritual awakening forces you to confront the structures that shaped your identity, beliefs formed in childhood, social conditioning absorbed unconsciously, emotional patterns inherited from your surroundings, and the unexamined assumptions that quietly guide your choices. When the awakening process begins, these internal frameworks do not simply soften. They begin to shake, distort, and eventually disintegrate. This dissolution is not random. Consciousness expands by removing anything that obstructs clarity, authenticity, or direct perception of reality. But the removal of familiar psychological layers can be disorienting. You may feel detached from the priorities that once motivated you. The activities that used to excite you might lose their emotional charge. The ambitions you once pursued with confidence may suddenly feel hollow, as if someone silently erased the meaning behind them. Awakening exposes the subtle mechanism of your desires, revealing how many of them were born from fear, validation, insecurity, or unconscious imitation, not from true inner guidance. As your awareness deepens, your perception of society also shifts. You begin noticing the silent pressures that shape human behavior, the pursuit of constant productivity, the obsession with identity labels, the need to conform to collective expectations, and the subtle fear of being misunderstood. These insights are empowering, but they can also feel heavy. Once you see through the illusions around you, it becomes increasingly difficult to revert to your old perspective. You no longer fit seamlessly into the environments you once felt comfortable in. Conversations that used to entertain you may feel superficial. Dynamics that once felt stable may feel energetically draining. Awakening alters your emotional sensitivity as well. You start detecting nuances in communication, shifts in energy, and layers of meaning in human interactions that previously escaped your awareness. This heightened sensitivity is a double-edged transformation. It offers deeper understanding, but also exposes you to emotional currents you may not be prepared to handle. It becomes easier to notice hidden resentment, unspoken fears, or subtle manipulations in people around you. Although this clarity helps you navigate relationships more consciously, it can also make social interactions feel overwhelming. Another aspect of the dark side of enlightenment emerges when you realize how much of your inner world has been suppressed. Awakening acts like a psychological floodlight, illuminating old memories you forgot, emotional wounds you dismissed, and unresolved tensions that quietly shaped your choices. These internal revelations do not surface gently. They rise with urgency, demanding acknowledgement. You may encounter sudden emotional waves without a clear external trigger, moments of sadness, frustration, or restlessness that seem to come out of nowhere. These are old emotional imprints surfacing for release, often appearing at the most unexpected times. The deeper you go into enlightenment, the more you recognize that your old identity was not entirely real. It was a collection of roles: protector, achiever, pleaser, rebel, dreamer, shaped by survival needs rather than authenticity. When these roles start dissolving, it may feel like you are losing yourself. In truth, the opposite is happening. You're becoming aware of the fundamental consciousness beneath those roles. But the transition between the old self and the emerging self is not smooth. It often feels like drifting between realities, as if you are simultaneously outgrowing your past while not yet grounded in who you are becoming. This internal transition impacts your external world. Relationships shift because awakening changes how you connect, communicate, and perceive others. You may start noticing patterns in relationships that you previously ignored, behaviors rooted in dependency, imbalance, or avoidance. Enlightenment makes these dynamics visible, and once they are visible, they cannot be unseen. This can create friction, distancing, or emotional discomfort, not because you are judging others, but because your awareness no longer aligns with old relational patterns. Some relationships naturally evolve to match your new level of consciousness. Others fade because they were anchored in versions of you that no longer exist. Awakening also changes how you experience solitude. Before awakening, solitude might have felt like quiet time or simple rest. After awakening, solitude becomes a transformative space, an environment where your inner world expands, where intuition sharpens, where hidden truths rise into awareness. This solitude can feel profound and nourishing, but it can also expose inner shadows you avoided for years. You might feel an unusual mix of peace and discomfort, as if your inner world is undergoing a renovation you didn't consciously initiate. A lesser-spoken element of Enlightenment's shadow is the sense of existential distance that arises when your consciousness evolves faster than your environment. You may begin to perceive life from a wider vantage point, seeing long-term patterns, understanding the nature of human suffering, sensing the interconnectedness of events, and recognizing the impermanence underlying all experiences. This expanded awareness can bring wisdom, but it can also create a feeling of separation, an awareness that you are perceiving life through a lens that many around you are not yet looking through. This is not superiority, it is simply a difference in perspective. But the emotional experience of this perspective shift can be isolating. And finally, as awakening progresses, you realize that enlightenment is not about accumulating spiritual knowledge or attaining mystical abilities. It is about stripping away illusions until only truth remains. This stripping process can feel raw, unnerving, or destabilizing because it challenges the mental structures you use to protect your sense of self. But without this temporary discomfort, authentic clarity cannot emerge. The shadow hidden inside the light is not darkness in the moral sense. It is the unfiltered reality of transformation, a process that dissolves illusions, reveals what was concealed, and replaces familiar comfort with unfamiliar depth. Awakening asks you to walk into this depth with honesty, courage, and a willingness to let truth reshape you. And although this transformation can feel challenging, it ultimately prepares you for a life aligned with your authentic consciousness rather than your inherited identity. The unexpected twist in enlightenment is this. The moment you believe you are stepping into the light, you are actually stepping into a deeper encounter with yourself, one that reveals layers you were never trained to see. Most people imagine spiritual awakening as an ascent into clarity, as if awakening gently lifts them into a more elevated experience of life. But the actual unfolding of consciousness is far more subtle and far more disruptive. It doesn't simply lift you, it uncovers you. And that uncovering exposes dimensions of your inner world that have been hiding beneath the surface of your awareness for years. When your consciousness expands, it behaves like a spotlight cutting through a dimly lit room. At first, you notice the beautiful structures, the insights, the realizations, the moments of deep presence. But as the light grows stronger, it begins to illuminate corners you never looked at. Unresolved emotions, forgotten memories, ego-driven motivations, subtle fears, unconscious defenses, and identities you crafted without realizing it. The brighter the awareness becomes, the more these hidden elements reveal themselves. You start to notice the very patterns you once believed you had already transcended. This is the twist that catches many seekers off guard. Spiritual growth magnifies what was previously invisible. It does not remove internal shadows automatically. Instead, it exposes them with such clarity that you can no longer ignore them. You see the roots of your frustration, the structure of your insecurities, the dynamics behind your emotional reactions, and the internal dialogues that shape how you interpret the world. What once operated quietly in the background now appears in front of you like a living landscape. This shift can be unsettling because it challenges your beliefs about progress. You might assume that seeing uncomfortable truths means you are regressing, or that awakening is supposed to eliminate your inner struggles. In reality, the appearance of these hidden layers is a sign that your awareness is becoming sharper, stronger, and more honest. You are not moving backward, you are moving inward. There is also a psychological dimension to this twist. As your awareness sharpens, you begin to recognize patterns in your behavior that were previously invisible. You notice how you respond when you feel threatened, how you avoid certain emotions, how you protect your identity, and how you seek validation from your environment. This recognition can create internal friction because it reveals that many of your behaviors were shaped by fear, conditioning, or survival strategies disguised as personality traits. These realizations are transformative, but they can feel destabilizing because they force you to question not just your actions, but the underlying reasons behind those actions. Another aspect of this twist appears in your emotional world. Awakening brings an increased sensitivity to your inner states. What once felt like minor discomfort may suddenly feel amplified. Emotions that used to pass unnoticed now demand your attention. This is not because awakening makes life more difficult, but because your awareness can no longer suppress what you once pushed away. When emotional patterns reveal themselves, it may feel overwhelming at first, but this intensity is simply the mind adjusting to a new level of honesty. The twist deepens when you realize how much of your identity was constructed unconsciously. You begin to notice the contradictions within yourself, the parts that crave freedom while clinging to control, the parts that seek change but resist discomfort, the parts that want truth but fear the consequences of seeing clearly. These contradictions were always there. You simply didn't have the awareness to recognize them. Now, awakening makes them impossible to overlook. As your perception evolves, the external world also begins to look different. Conversations feel layered, environments feel energetically distinct, interactions reveal unspoken motives and emotional undercurrents. This perceptual clarity is empowering, but it can initially feel disorienting. You may feel like you are perceiving multiple layers of reality at once, the surface layer of behavior and the deeper layer of intention, emotion, or energy behind it. This is not imagination. It is the mind learning to see beyond the obvious. The twist becomes even more striking when you realize that enlightenment does not guarantee comfort. Insight does not automatically lead to ease. Awareness does not immediately produce peace. In fact, the first stages of expanded perception often create discomfort because they dissolve the illusions that once provided emotional stability. You cannot unknow what you now see. You cannot return to pretending. You cannot close your awareness once it has been opened. This irreversible shift marks the true beginning of spiritual transformation. There is also an energetic dimension to this twist. As your consciousness expands, your internal sensitivity increases, not just to your emotions and thoughts, but to the subtle currents in your environment. You sense underlying tension, unspoken truth, unresolved conflicts, and energetic inconsistencies. This can make normal social interactions feel strangely amplified. You notice when someone's words do not match their energy. You feel the emotional tone of a room before anyone speaks. You pick up on sensations your old self would have ignored. This heightened sensitivity is not instability. It is a sign that your awareness is becoming multidimensional. But perhaps the most challenging part of this twist is the realization that awakening is not simply an experience. It is a reorientation of how you interact with life. Once you begin to see the deeper patterns, you can no longer rely on your old ways of thinking or reacting. You must learn to navigate your inner world with a level of honesty and maturity that your previous identity wasn't designed to handle. This transition requires patience, humility, and a willingness to let go of the belief that enlightenment removes the challenges of being human. Instead, it reveals the truth beneath those challenges and teaches you how to meet them with clarity rather than avoidance. Awakening bends your perception by showing you that the light you seek does not eliminate your inner shadows, it exposes them. It brings clarity, but clarity reveals both the beauty and the complexity within you. And that revelation becomes the invitation to grow in a way that superficial spirituality could never prepare you for. The hidden twist is that enlightenment is not about escaping your shadows. It is about finally having the awareness to understand them, integrate them, and see them as part of your evolution rather than as obstacles. The deeper truth behind enlightenment is far more complex than the polished versions offered in popular spirituality. What most seekers do not realize is that awakening is not a gentle transition from confusion to clarity. It is a restructuring of consciousness that touches every dimension of your being. It shifts your perception, rewires emotional patterns, challenges the nervous system, destabilizes long-held identities, and exposes the illusions that supported your life. And because these changes often unfold subtly and unpredictably, many people mistake the process for emotional turmoil or psychological instability. Authentic awakening does not simply add insight, it replaces old frameworks with an entirely new way of experiencing reality. The intellectual understanding of spiritual concepts is only surface level. Real awakening is experiential, and once it begins, you cannot fully control or reverse it. It unfolds in stages, often beginning with a subtle interruption in the way you normally interpret yourself and your environment. Something cracks open, sometimes quietly, sometimes explosively. The mind becomes permeable. Your awareness begins noticing details you previously filtered out. This shift may occur during meditation, a moment of emotional intensity, a sudden life event, or simply during an unexpected moment of clarity. Once the process begins, you start perceiving internal patterns that operated for years without recognition. This newfound awareness is not abstract, it is visceral. You feel internal reactions before they fully form. You observe your mind generating narratives. You notice how your emotions originate, not at the surface level of feelings, but at the level of subconscious associations and unprocessed memories. Awakening turns the inner world into a transparent field, revealing the mechanics behind your behavior. The first major insight is that your ego structure does not vanish, it transforms through resistance. The ego is not an enemy, it is a psychological protector built to help you survive. But as awareness expands, the ego detects the threat of dissolution and begins defending itself through subtle tactics. You may experience sudden internal arguments, doubts about your path, increased self-criticism, or a desire to retreat into familiar habits. These reactions are often misinterpreted as regression. In reality, they signal the ego's attempt to negotiate its relevance during a period of transformation. Another layer of awakening involves the nervous system. Enlightenment affects neurologically how you process experience. Heightened awareness amplifies perception, making sounds sharper, emotions more intense, and thoughts more interconnected. While this increased sensitivity opens new levels of understanding, it can also create overwhelm if your body is not grounded. You might notice your sleep patterns shifting, your appetite changing, or your tolerance for noise, conflict, or chaos decreasing. This is not a spiritual failure. This is the nervous system adapting to a higher bandwidth of awareness. A third dimension of the core insight lies in emotional purification. When unprocessed emotional material rises, it comes with intensity because the mind is no longer suppressing it. Old emotional experiences may surface unexpectedly. Grief from years ago, anger you thought you moved past, fear you did not realize existed. These emotional waves may feel disproportionate to the present moment because they are not about the present. They are remnants of the past returning for release. Enlightenment is not an escape from emotion. It is the deeper capacity to witness emotion without being controlled by it. There is also a significant shift in your relational world. As your consciousness evolves, the dynamics within your relationships change. You begin recognizing patterns of codependence, unconscious agreements, manipulative tendencies, or emotional mismatches that were previously hidden. You may feel a natural distancing from relationships built on old versions of yourself. This distancing is not rejection, it is a result of your inner world becoming more aligned with truth. Some relationships adapt and grow with you. Others dissolve because the energetic foundation can no longer sustain itself. This process can feel painful, but it is part of the clearing required for authentic living. Another deeper truth emerges when you realize how many of your ambitions were built on unconscious motivations. You begin questioning why you wanted success, recognition, control, or approval in the first place. Awakening dismantles these motivations by exposing the deeper needs beneath them: belonging, safety, identity, validation. Once these roots are illuminated, the ambitions tied to them collapse. This collapse can feel like losing direction, but it is actually the beginning of discovering desire that originates from authenticity rather than psychological survival. One of the most challenging insights arises when you encounter the spiritual ego. Even as you expand, the ego quietly rebuilds itself using spiritual language and spiritual identity. It may convince you that you are more awakened than others, or that your insights make you special. It may create an inner hierarchy where you view yourself as above normal human concerns. This distortion is subtle and can mislead seekers for years. True awakening dissolves the need for spiritual superiority and replaces it with humility rooted in direct experience rather than intellectual abstraction. As these layers unfold, another realization appears. Enlightenment is not a constant state of bliss or calm. It includes periods of clarity followed by confusion, expansion followed by contraction, insight followed by emptiness. These fluctuations are not signs of failure, they are part of the rhythm of transformation. Consciousness evolves in cycles, not in a linear ascent. The deeper the transformation, the more cycles you experience, each cycle revealing a new layer of illusion to release and a new layer of truth to integrate. Eventually, a profound insight settles into your awareness. Your old life cannot fully support the person you are becoming. This does not mean you must abandon your life. It means your relationship with it changes. Your work, relationships, desires, and motivations begin reorganizing themselves around authenticity rather than conditioning. What once felt compelling might now feel irrelevant. What once felt irrelevant might now feel essential. You begin navigating reality from a deeper intelligence within you, one that does not depend on external validation. The core truth spiritual teachers rarely reveal is that enlightenment is not an escape from yourself. It is an encounter with yourself so direct and so unfiltered that it changes how you perceive reality at the deepest level. Awakening does not grant you a new world. It reveals the world beneath the illusions you once relied on. It demands honesty, courage, and the willingness to lose everything false in order to make space for what is real. This is the heart of enlightenment, not the attainment of mystical states, but the stripping away of everything that prevented you from seeing clearly. Maybe you've been sensing a quiet shift inside you for some time now, something subtle, yet unmistakable, something that doesn't fit into simple explanations. You might notice it in moments when you feel strangely distant from the things that used to define you, the conversations you tolerated, the routines you followed, the desires you pursued without question. These experiences may feel fragmented at first, as if they are not connected, but beneath them is a deeper internal movement you can no longer ignore. There are times when you wake up with a feeling that something has changed, though your external life looks exactly the same. You sense an internal pressure, a kind of invisible momentum guiding you toward a different version of yourself. It's not dramatic, but it's persistent. It's the feeling that your old identity is becoming too small for who you are becoming. Perhaps you've already noticed moments where familiar environments feel unfamiliar. You sit among friends you've known for years, yet you feel internally detached, watching interactions with a different kind of awareness. You sense emotional undertones you never noticed before. You observe patterns that once felt normal, but now feel misaligned. This can create a mixture of discomfort and clarity. You're not losing connection, you're gaining a new level of perception. And then there are the emotional shifts. You might find yourself feeling waves of sadness or frustration without understanding why. You might experience sudden bursts of motivation or sudden collapses of interest. You may look at parts of your life, career, relationships, ambitions, and realize they were built on assumptions or emotional needs that no longer hold meaning. This transition can feel like standing between two worlds: the life you once lived and the life that has not yet revealed itself. These experiences do not mean you are failing or falling apart. They mean you are awakening. Awakening rarely begins with clarity, it begins with disruption. Your inner world reconfigures itself, not because you consciously choose to change, but because the truth within you begins to rise naturally. It pulls you away from what no longer resonates and draws you closer to what aligns with your expanding awareness. This process affects your relationships as well. You may feel conflicted when interacting with people who still relate to the older version of you. It might seem as if they are speaking to someone who no longer exists, someone you can no longer perform. This brings a mix of guilt, confusion, and sometimes grief. You may also feel guilt for outgrowing relationships that once held meaning. You may wonder if distancing yourself is unkind or unfair, but what you are sensing is not rejection, it is an internal shift. Your emotional frequency is changing, and relationships built on previous versions of yourself naturally feel less stable. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it simply means you can no longer pretend to be smaller than the truth unfolding inside you. There are also moments when you feel profoundly seen by something greater than yourself. An inner intelligence, a higher guidance, a silent knowing that operates from a deeper part of your consciousness. It may appear during quiet moments, when sitting alone at night, during a walk, or when staring at a familiar place that suddenly feels new. These experiences remind you that transformation does not always come from dramatic events. Often, it emerges from the subtle recognition that your inner world is expanding beyond your old boundaries. You might also feel the tension of wanting to express what you are going through, yet realizing that the language to describe it does not exist within the people around you. You sense things you cannot articulate. You see emotional truth behind situations. You understand patterns you never studied. These insights make you feel both empowered and isolated. This is one of the most difficult aspects of awakening. You begin to hold knowledge that cannot be easily shared. During this transition, compassion for yourself becomes crucial. You are not meant to navigate these shifts with perfect clarity. Awakening is not a clean, linear process. It is messy, unpredictable, and deeply human. There will be days when you feel aligned and centered, and days when you feel lost and uncertain. Both states are part of your evolution. Both are signs of growth. You may also feel moments of profound vulnerability. As the layers of protection you built throughout your life begin dissolving, you may sense emotional rawness you haven't felt since childhood. This vulnerability is not weakness. It is the return of your unfiltered self, your deeper essence that existed before you constructed defenses, identities, and survival strategies. This essence is surfacing now because your awareness is strong enough to hold it. And as you go through these shifts, there may come a moment when you realize that you are not behind in life, not confused, not broken. You are transforming. The disorientation you feel is simply the space between who you were and who you are becoming. You are being called inward, not away from the world, but toward a deeper orientation within it. This is what makes the path personal. It reaches into your relationships, your identity, your habits, your emotions, and your sense of reality. It challenges what you thought was stable. It reshapes your internal landscape piece by piece, until the person you once were feels like a distant memory. You are not losing yourself. You are meeting yourself more directly than ever before. Awakening becomes personal when you can no longer pretend that the life you lived on autopilot belongs to you. It becomes personal when you realize that transformation is not abstract. It is happening inside your thoughts, your emotions, your perceptions, your choices. And you begin to sense that something within you is guiding this evolution with a precision you could not have orchestrated consciously. You are not walking this path because it makes life easier. You are walking it because something deep within you has awakened, something that refuses to let you remain in the limited version of yourself you once believed was real. That is the moment awakening becomes unmistakably personal, when you feel the pull of your own transformation, leading you toward a life built not on illusion but on truth. At this stage of your awakening, the question is no longer whether you are changing, because the change is already underway. The real question is how you choose to move through this transformation. Awakening is not a spiritual performance. It is not something you announce, display, or force. It is an internal shift that unfolds through the smallest moments of clarity, the quiet decisions you make in solitude, and the subtle awareness that begins guiding your inner world more than your past conditioning ever did. Stepping forward with awareness does not require dramatic gestures. It does not require abandoning your life or retreating into isolation. Instead, it begins with the decision to be honest with yourself. This honesty is the doorway. Without it, awakening becomes a concept. With it, awakening becomes a lived reality. You begin by slowing the momentum of your mind. Not stopping it, simply slowing it enough to observe what is happening inside you without being swept into old patterns. Notice the way your thoughts form, the speed at which they pull your attention, and the emotional tone they carry. This kind of observation is not about controlling your mind, it is about understanding it. When you observe your internal processes with clarity, your relationship with them begins to shift. Thoughts lose their authority. Emotions lose their urgency. Inattention begins dissolving simply because you are willing to see it without resistance. Awakening also invites you to pay attention to your body, the subtle ways it communicates long before the mind interprets anything. You may notice sensations that hint at emotional truth, tension that indicates unspoken resistance, or calmness that lets you know you are aligned. Your body becomes a compass, revealing what your mind often hides. Listening to this internal intelligence is a vital part of stepping forward with awareness, because the body stores the truths the mind avoids. Another essential step is grounding. Awakening expands your perception, but without grounding, expansion turns into overwhelm. Grounding is not a ceremony, it is the conscious decision to reconnect with your physical presence. It can happen through breath, through deliberate slowness, through nature, through silence, through simply feeling your feet on the floor. Grounding stabilizes your expanding awareness, allowing you to integrate the insights you receive instead of being consumed by them. This is how you build inner strength, quietly, consistently, without forcing anything. As you move forward, you begin to recognize the ego's subtle strategies. The ego does not disappear when you awaken. It adapts. It attempts to maintain relevance through doubt, comparison, defensiveness, or sudden emotional reactivity. Awareness does not silence the ego, it simply exposes its movements. When you see the ego clearly, its influence weakens. You are no longer manipulated by its narratives. Instead of reacting impulsively, you begin responding consciously. This shift alone can transform your entire inner world. Stepping forward with awareness also means becoming sensitive to the emotional truths you have avoided. Many people bypass their emotional reality in the name of spirituality, but awakening requires integration, not avoidance. You may notice that emotions arise more vividly now: grief, anger, joy, confusion, longing. Instead of dismissing them, examine what they reveal. Emotions are not obstacles, they are signals. They show you where your inner world is asking for attention. When you meet these emotions with compassion, without judgment, they begin to unravel in ways that free you rather than overwhelm you. There is also a growing internal intuition that emerges during awakening, a subtle guidance that feels deeper than thought. You may begin sensing what is right for you without having logical explanations. You may feel the pull toward certain choices and the resistance toward others, even when the reasons are not obvious. This guidance does not shout. It does not demand obedience. It moves quietly, inviting you toward alignment rather than forcing you. Following this inner intelligence is one of the most powerful steps in awakening, because it reconnects you with a part of yourself that has always been present, yet was overshadowed by noise and conditioning. As you integrate these practices, something profound begins to happen. You stop bargaining with your transformation. You no longer ask it to be convenient or comfortable. You start accepting that discomfort is not a sign of failure, but a sign of depth. You no longer seek to control the experience, you allow it to unfold. This acceptance creates a level of psychological spaciousness that makes the journey sustainable. You stop demanding that awakening fit into your old life, and instead you allow your old life to rearrange itself around your awakening. Stepping forward with awareness also involves reevaluating the identities you have clung to. You begin asking yourself questions that have no simple answers. Who am I when I am not performing a role? Who am I without the expectations others place on me? Who am I without the ambitions I inherited rather than chose? Who am I when I am simply present without pretense? These questions are not intellectual. They are experiential. They dismantle layers of identity you once believed were permanent. This dismantling is not meant to create emptiness. It creates space. Space for authenticity. Space for truth. Space for the version of you that has been waiting beneath all the mental noise and emotional defenses. And as you walk this path, another realization emerges. Awakening is not separate from your life. It does not require retreating from the world. It asks you to bring awareness into your world, into your conversations, into your habits, into your decisions, into your reactions, into the way you love, the way you work, the way you relate to yourself. When awareness enters your life in this way, awakening stops being something you are doing and becomes something you are living. This is the essence of stepping forward. Not chasing enlightenment, not forcing transformation, but participating in your own evolution with clarity and intention. Awakening is an invitation, not a command. It invites you to walk inward, not with urgency, but with presence. It invites you to align your inner world with truth, not through force, but through honesty. It invites you to release the versions of yourself that were built on survival and to step into the version built on consciousness. This step is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is not ceremonial. It is the quiet decision to allow awareness to shape your life from the inside out. And once you make that decision, genuinely, intentionally, the path ahead becomes clearer than you ever imagined. As the journey comes full circle, something begins to settle inside you. A calm recognition that enlightenment is not a final destination, but an ongoing conversation with your own consciousness. You started by questioning what hides in the shadows of awakening, and now you stand at a place where those shadows no longer feel foreign. They have become familiar territory, part of the landscape of your inner world. What once felt intimidating now feels navigable. The unknown is no longer something you try to avoid. It becomes a space you can enter without collapsing into fear. You realize that your growth has not been measured by grand revelations or dramatic transformations, but by the subtle shifts in how you perceive yourself. The person who began this journey is not the same person sitting here now. There is a new quality in your awareness, a deeper steadiness, a quieter understanding, a more grounded sense of presence. You may notice that the world around you looks slightly different. Not in appearance, but in meaning. The ordinary moments of your life carry a different weight. You listen more carefully, you speak with more intention, you observe your thoughts with curiosity instead of urgency. There is a gentleness in your perception that wasn't there before, a recognition that you do not need to conquer your inner world, only understand it. This is where the journey of enlightenment reveals its real purpose. It is not about escaping your humanity, it is about inhabiting it fully. The more you grow, the more you return to the simple truth that awareness is not a performance, not a status, not a badge of superiority. It is a state of participation with your own existence. It is the ability to meet your inner shadows without dramatization and to meet your inner clarity without pride. You begin to recognize that the so-called dark side of enlightenment is not a flaw in the process, but an essential part of it. Illusions must fall apart before truth can stand. Attachments must loosen before freedom can emerge. Identity must soften before authenticity can unfold. These transitions are not punishments, they are passages. And you moved through them, step by step, even when you doubted yourself, even when the path felt uncertain. As you reflect on the journey, another realization appears. Awakening does not make life easier, it makes life clearer. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond from awareness. Instead of seeking validation, you seek alignment. Instead of chasing meaning, you create it. You are no longer living from the surface of your mind, you are living from the depth of your being. This clarity does not remove challenges, but it changes your relationship with them. Instead of resisting discomfort, you examine it. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you explore it. Instead of collapsing under emotional intensity, you learn from it. The inner world that once seemed chaotic becomes a navigable landscape. Complex, yes, but not impossible to understand. This is the quiet transformation that defines real awakening. There is also a sense of responsibility emerging in you, not a burden, but a natural result of awareness. You understand that your consciousness affects your choices affect your reality, and your reality affects your life's quality. Awareness does not isolate you from the world, it connects you to it in a deeper way. You begin participating in your own destiny with clarity instead of drifting through it unconsciously. And now, as the journey gently closes, you find yourself standing at an unexpected threshold. Not the end of enlightenment, but the beginning of a new relationship with yourself. You are no longer searching for answers in distant mysteries. You are discovering them in your own awareness. The path ahead is open, not because it is predictable, but because you are no longer intimidated by unpredictability. You can walk into the unknown with confidence that grows from insight rather than illusion. As you return to your ordinary life after this inner exploration, something subtle remains with you. A quieter mind, a steadier presence, a deeper sense of who you are beneath the shifting narratives of your identity. You carry this awareness with you, not as a dramatic transformation, but as a stable inner orientation. The world will continue moving at its usual pace, but you will move differently within it, with more intention, with more clarity, with more alignment. Enlightenment has not removed you from reality, it has returned you to it with new eyes and a new center. If there is one truth that lingers, it is this: awakening is not a moment, but a relationship, an ongoing engagement with your own consciousness. And now that relationship is clearer than it has ever been. You walk forward, not as someone who has escaped the shadows, but as someone who understands them. Not as someone who seeks constant transcendence, but as someone who can live fully in the human experience while holding a deeper awareness. Not as someone who has completed a journey, but as someone who knows how to continue it. This is the quiet return to yourself, not dramatic, not ceremonial, just real grounded awareness. And from here, your next chapter begins.